we've all seen it, right? Trillions of dollars pouring into the AI revolution. But what if? What if the whole thing's built on a house of cards? Today, we're going to follow the money and find out if this AI boom is the real deal or just a super expensive illusion. So let's just cut to the chase. The question on everyone's mind as we head into 2026 is this: is the AI boom for real, or is it just an illusion, propped up by hype instead of actual paying customers? Okay, to really get into that, I want you to look at this number, $600 billion. That is the absolutely staggering gap that Sequoia Capital found between the cash flooding into AI chips and servers and the actual money, the real revenue, coming out the other end. So it really makes you wonder, right? Where is all that cash going? Yeah, that gap, that massive $600 billion question mark, it forces us to play detective and follow the money. If we want to understand this potential bubble, we've got to dig into the true and often kind of hidden costs of what it takes to actually make AI work. And this is where things get really interesting. See, it's not just about the fancy chips. For every single dollar you spend on a powerful GPU, you have to spend another dollar on just the energy to run it and the massive infrastructure to keep it cool. So right off the bat, the real cost of compute is double what most people even realize. Ugh, but it gets so much steeper. For an AI company to actually be a healthy business, with a decent 50% gross margin, it has to generate $4 in revenue for every $1 it spends on compute. I mean, when you start doing that math, the amount of revenue you'd need to justify all this spending, it's just astronomical. It's almost unbelievable. So if real customers aren't filling that $600 billion hole, what is? Well, a huge piece of the puzzle is this really clever, but also maybe really fragile financial trick called circular revenue. Okay, so check this out. Here's how it works. Step 1. A tech giant, think Microsoft, Google, Amazon, invests a ton of money into a hot AI startup. But here's the catch. A big chunk of that investment isn't cash. It's cloud credits. Then, the startup has to spend those credits on the tech giant's own cloud services to train their models. And finally, the tech giant turns around and books that spending as new AI revenue on their own books. It's this perfect self-fulfilling prophecy. Big tech is literally funding its own customers just to pump up its own growth numbers. And you better believe veteran investors are screaming about this from the rooftops. As Bill Gurley says, this whole round-tripping thing is just pulling growth forward from the future. It's not real organic growth. Which leads to the billion-dollar question, or maybe the trillion-dollar question. What happens when all those free credits finally run out? This house of cards, this shaky financial foundation, is already having some pretty brutal real-world consequences. It's leading to something people are now calling the wrapper apocalypse. And yeah, it's exactly what it sounds like. The startups with the weakest defenses are the first ones getting wiped out. So who are the first victims? They're called AI wrappers. Basically, these are companies that don't build their own core AI models. They just put a pretty user interface, a wrapper, on top of an existing model like GPT-4. Take Jasper AI. It was a copywriting tool valued at $1.5 billion. And then, boom, ChatGPT came along, offered similar stuff for free, and Jasper's value just cratered. Here's another perfect example, Tome. They made this cool AI tool for building presentations. But their big, innovative feature, well, it was quickly copied and just absorbed by Microsoft, who baked it right into PowerPoint. And this is the brutal lesson so many startups are learning. What you think is a product is often just a feature that a giant platform is going to build for free tomorrow. And the outlook here is, well, it's grim. Seriously. Analysts are predicting that a huge majority of these wrapper companies, we're talking somewhere between 80 and 99%, are going to fail or get bought for pennies on the dollar by 2026. It's creating this massive graveyard of what were, just a year ago, super promising startups. But, this wrapper apocalypse in the West isn't the whole story. To really get the global picture, we need to shift our focus and look at a place like India, where the AI ecosystem is being built on a totally different foundation. And the difference is just, it's stark. While the US and the global north are all about that VC funding, India's AI push is being led by massive industrial conglomerates. We're talking Reliance, Tata. They're all in on this idea of sovereign AI, building their own independent systems. Meanwhile, the smaller startups there are facing what's called a funding winter, basically a huge drop-off in investment cash. And this national strategy is creating a totally unique ecosystem. The goal? Independence from the West. You've got companies like Krutrim, which is India's first AI unicorn, building models specifically for India's 22 official languages. You've got Sarvam AI partnering with Microsoft, sure, but to deploy their own Indic voice models. And then you have a giant like Reliance Jio pouring $11 billion into building their own domestic AI data capacity. It's a full-on, national-scale effort to own their own AI future. So you've got this great divergence, right? A totally different financial game in the West versus a national strategy in India. And all this has led some really prominent founders and CEOs, both in India and globally, to issue some pretty stark warnings about what they're seeing. Take Sridhar Vembu, the founder of Zoho. He looks at all this and sees a clear parallel to the past. He's saying that these circular revenue schemes aren't a sign of a productivity boom. No. He thinks they're the classic signature of a financial bubble, and he says it feels just like the dot-com crash all over again. Then you have Kunal Shah, the founder of Cred, who has this totally fascinating, kind of sociological take on it. He points out that the big promise of AI is that it'll free up our time so we can do more productive things, right? But what's actually happening? He argues that any time we save is just immediately getting sucked up by entertainment. TikTok, Instagram Reels, which basically cancels out any big economic benefit. And Nathan Kamath from Zerodha, he just brings it all back to basics. He's like, look, the technology is real. No one is denying that. But the financial mania, the hype around it, that's following a script that's as old as time. It's just greed and leverage driving valuations way, way beyond what's real. But maybe the most chilling warning comes from a true insider. In this surprisingly candid moment, Google's CEO, Sundar Pichai himself, admitted there's irrationality in the market. And he said that no company, not even a giant like Google, is safe if this bubble finally bursts. Okay, so where does all this leave us? Is it all doom and gloom? Well, the evidence seems to be pointing not to one big, dramatic pop, but something more like a slow, painful correction, a great rationalization, as some are calling it. So what does that actually look like? Well, for starters, the era of growth at all costs is dead. It's over. The new name of the game is simply survival. And the only thing that's going to matter is positive cash flow. We're going to see a lot more startups shut down. We're going to see others get snatched up by bigger companies just for their tech and their talent. It's basically a massive and probably painful, but necessary cleanup of the whole ecosystem. So the big takeaway here isn't about trying to predict some big crash. The reality is the unwinding has already started. The party's over, the cleanup has begun, and so the real question isn't just about who's going to get left behind. It's what will the world of AI actually look like when all the hype finally fades away and the only thing left is real, tangible value.